All right. Please welcome Doug Cosmo Clifford
And Lori, who just fixed the thing.
and Lori. Thank you, Lori.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Here we are. For a minute, I thought maybe you got cold feet and you backed out on me. Doug, it's great to see you. Thanks for doing this today. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, John.
Man, what an honor and a pleasure. I was gonna save a couple of these comments for the end of the show, but I actually want to start off reading you just a couple of things that some drummer friends had to say about you. I hope you don't mind. I know you're a humble man. So I know you don't know this man, but I'm sure you know who he is. Stan Lynch was the original drummer for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Sure.
Yeah, from the mid 70s to the mid 90s, played on all their big songs, big records. So Stan's an old friend, and we were geeking out about you over the weekend and talking. We were on the phone, and I said, hey, do me a favor and just shoot me an email with just some of your thoughts about Doug. So I'm going to read this to you. Stan's a man of not a few words. Doug Clifford, holy shit. Cosmo is a living drumming American masterclass on how to stoke the furnace of a rock and roll hit-making blast furnace. He's one of those once-in-a-lifetime musicians who's forged into our souls. Every one of his grooves and fills are not up for interpretation. They are perfectly crafted and brilliantly and passionately executed. And as with all the greats, impossible to duplicate. His records get better with every listen. Every time he's on my radio, and it's a lot, I drive a little faster and smile wider. I've never met him, but it feels like he's always been in my life. I've got a million questions. Those giant hi-hats, that snare sound, everyone knows Doug and Stu are the gold standard. They hold the patent on a priceless brand of sonic architecture. From memory, I wrote down a few songs I've learned to play in the various bands I've been in. He says, John, read this list slowly. Let the grooves come to you and know Doug did that. And then he just named off, Have You Ever Seen the Rain? Fortunate Son, Born on the Bayou, Bad Moon Rising, Looking Out My Back Door, Green River, Down on the Corner, Travelin Band, Heard It Through the Grapevine, Lodi, Susie Q, Run Through the Jungle, Up Around the Bend, Proud Mary, Midnight Special. And he closes by saying, with respect and heartfelt thanks for your mentorship, Stan Lynch. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I wanted to just start that off because when we first spoke a couple of weeks ago, when we made contact, and I have to tell you, that day you called me, I got off the phone and I just had this giant smile on my face. And I said to my wife, I just got off the phone with Doug Clifford. And she knew that we had watched that Netflix documentary together. And I was just, for like a couple of weeks, freaking out. Just said, I got to track him down. I got to talk to him. So anyway, I'm trying not to geek out too much, but man, I know you're a humble man, and I wanted you to hear what Stan had to say. And also another drummer, I just have these two quotes. This drummer says, I'll tell you who he is when I finish reading what he said. He's a man of fewer words, but he said this. I love Creedence. Their songs still hold up today. They're a real band. I'm a huge fan of Doug's playing. He has his own style and sound with a great feel and a deep groove. Thanks for the inspiration. And that was from Steve Gadd.
Oh.
Yeah. He's a big fan. And I knew he was. I knew he was familiar with the music. And so anyway.
Thank you for the kind words, both of you gentlemen. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I can speak for them and say you're very welcome, and it's well deserved. Yeah, I have so many questions I want to ask you. I'm going to try to get through it as sort of chronologically as I can. First of all, how's everything else with you? You doing well? You're
I'm 77 years old.
Yeah, you look great, man.
Vertical, so I guess I'm doing good work.
Yeah, you are. You're doing fine work. And you look like you've kept yourself in good shape all these years too. I mean, you still look like you're still very fit. That goes a long way, as we age. I'm catching up to you, so I know what you're
Well,
saying.
it's just something I've always done, so it's just part of the program, a cog in the wheel.
Yeah. Yep. Um, and you must be proud. I mean, I know you've seen the Netflix documentary. Um, is it hard for you? I mean, being the humble man that you are, do you watch something like that and are you sort of critical of yourself, or are you able to look at that and realize how unbelievably great it was and appreciate it?
Well, I would say a little of both, or a lot of both. Yeah, it was bittersweet. We we started out as 13-year-olds with a dream, and the dream was to someday have our songs played on the radio. And they've
Yeah.
been doing it for 54 years. So
I was going to say, man, did you ever reach that dream? I mean, long after our great grandkids are gone, that music will be alive and well. I mean, that's something to be so proud of.
hats off to John Fogerty for writing good songs, and also uh, letting me do my thing and take care of the drum section. There were three other guys. They were all guitar players. I was the only drummer in the room, and taught myself by listening to the radio, the R&B station, and the top 40 station, and I put my books on my desk and had a little brass lamp as the cymbals, and my pencils, and I listened to the drummers and to see what they were doing. And a lot of the times, because of just teaching myself, that's how, so I better listen to the radio, and that was my source. And so things that were too technical for me, and I still wanted to get the feeling of what it was doing to my heart, turning a groove into something a little bit less technical. And that's really been a big help in selecting parts, because I learned them a little bit. We borrow, and professionals borrow, amateurs steal. So uh, I'm
I
a
love
little
that.
of both. So yeah, there are things that you just hear it, and it's in the vault.
Yeah.
And when there's a piece of music that I'm looking for, that feeling that particular note or part gave me, and use it that way.
It's really incredible, Doug, that I think you had the foresight back then to, as a young guy, to have the discipline to play, to not try to play technically, to not try to do what a lot of, drummers, myself included, do. You got a little open space here where you could put a little something fun and fancy in there that other drummers would hear and go, wow. But instead, you chose to play these solid, rock solid parts, and you created these parts that are so integral to these songs. I mean, little things like we talked about on the phone that day. To me, my favorite song, and it might be yours too, I know it's one of your favorites, is Have You Ever Seen the Rain? And when I listen to how that's constructed, and how you open the hi-hat a little bit on the chorus, and then you just tighten it back up on the verse, and then at the end when you're hitting the crash cymbals on 2 and 4 and that last coda during the chorus repeating, I just think that's genius. It's like it's up there with the great drum parts ever constructed. So
Wow.
Tip my
Well,
hat.
that's that's part of the stealing part. Don't tell-
Well, I don't know who you stole that from, but it's beautiful. It's just it's such a. I mean, and that's just one. There are a million. I mean, I, God, you know, we could just go through the list, but Stan Lynch, who I mentioned earlier, sent me. I'll send it to you afterward. Maybe you've heard this, but there's a YouTube video of the isolated drum track to "Fortunate Son." Have you heard this?
I have.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I was losing my mind. I really was. When you hear that, it's like a metronome slash freight train. Do you know? It's like this perfectly deep groove, but with the power of a freight train just chugging down the tracks. It's
Well, it's an interpretation of what the power of the song itself, the piece of music, the written piece, and then you know, you try different things to match that. And so I would do my homework and take little note takers, little Sony cassette machines, and put them on the floor of the studio where at Cosmo's factory.
yeah, of course.
And I could hear all the instruments. I wasn't trying to get quality out of it. I just needed a note taker to hear what everyone was playing, their interpretation of the music, and a lot of it, John is just in there telling them what to do. And that's, you know, that's where I had I think the advantage, because they knew guitar inside out and backwards, and that part was taken care of. But I had the drums pretty well working for me, and that allowed me to have the parts that I suggested used a lot of the time, and in some cases most of the time. And there was a few songs where Who Will Stop the Rain? Actually, not Have You Ever Seen the Rain, but Who Will Stop the Rain? There's a lot of snare drum breaks and parts running, you know, through the setting up the chorus, and then taking. It's not really a triplet, but it's a triplet feel. The way it moves the notes, so the note before it has to be less, or the note that you're adding in has to be more, and if it doesn't fit that criteria, then you keep going until you find something that works, and moves that music the way I interpret it, and when you have good songs coming, it really makes a difference for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand that, and yeah, that's another great example of a beautifully crafted part. And you know, the at the very end of it, the rest where you do the little triplet, which I thought was your crash cymbal, but you can tell everybody what that is. A little ding. Yeah.
It's years and years of putting your ear up against the radio, and you know, just, and the thing about a top 40 is those are all successful pieces of music. You may not like every piece of music or every song, and nobody really does, but the ones that there was a mixture. Of course, the R&B stuff was just we're in a little bourbon the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, El Cerrito, and we could actually go and see some of these great players, and got to the point where, you know, got to be kind of dangerous, and we were young kids sneaking into these bars, and on in the black neighborhoods, and they left us alone because they could tell that we were there for the music, and it was accepted. But then things got crazy in society, and we were unable to do that. Jimmy Reed and I guess this is his wife that was telling him the words to the songs, because he had had a little too much to drink, and it was just a unique team they had, and she would throw out the line and he would sing it, and of course I'm watching the drummer, and learned a lot just from watching what they were doing, and the cool things they were playing to make that, whatever that song was being played at the time, just experiences that you learn, and you never stop learning. I'm learning some other things now. I even tried a couple of combination jazz and R&B just when I'm goofing off. So
Great.
just
Yeah.
just to see what come out. Yeah.
That's great. No, always learning. Absolutely. So you start, you're self-taught, you started playing, listening to records, and you said listening to like R&B, and who were some of the drummers that when you started playing that you were listening to, or some of the
Well,
bands?
Gene Krupa is the guy that made me want to be a drummer.
Yeah.
And but it wasn't my style of music.
Right.
But he was the guy that made the light bulb go off, and I wanted to play an instrument. In early rock and roll, the lead instrument was saxophone, and a lot of the recordings that were done in New Orleans, and those were all jazz cats that were doing that, and various artists would use the same players to make records, and then if they had success, then they would have to go and get a traveling band to take it out on the road. But the studio band stayed put, and so when there would be a solo, it would be a saxophone. So I almost went for the sax. Thank God I didn't do that. Nothing sax players, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
when I saw this television special with Gene Krupa, I said, "Oh man, that's the answer right there." And so I started buying parts. Bought a snare drum, and then used a flower pot stand. The wrought iron that was my mother's. Then she never used it for that purpose. So I balanced my snare drum on the little wrought iron gizmo that had a fiberglass, like a bullet head.
Mhm.
You put flowers in it. I kept the flowers away. Started building a drum set out of that with lawn jobs and things like that to raise money. And slowly but surely, I ended up buying an old Slingerland set that was so old that the bottom heads on the tom-toms were tacks.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen pictures of those drums. Yeah.
It was from the 30s.
Okay.
But I got a hell of a price on it. The problem was anything that would happen to go wrong, there were no parts that would, that would work, because there weren't any of those drums around for parts.
Right.
Anyway, I made do, and we get, improving, and playing gigs and doing this and doing that, but we did a lot of recording, and that was Tom Fogerty doing that. Without Tom Fogerty, there would have been no Creedence. We never would have had that opportunity to go in and start recording when we were 14 years old, and Tom's band didn't want to do it because they're prototypical musicians, I suppose, but they ask about the sessions. He said, I want you guys to learn these 2 songs. They said, then we're going to record. I'm going to drive to LA and try and get a gig for us. And they said, are we getting paid? He said, no, I'm paying for all of this. There's opportunity here. He said, are there going to be any chicks there? He said, no. We're going in to record. So they said, this is the one I really like, the closing line. He says, we'd rather work on our cars.
Oh, man.
Those words were the beginning of something magnificent. So that's how it's all started. And we kept recording and trying to, get a single on the radio, get the songs played on the radio. And we had a regional hit that got us enough money to buy new equipment. We reinvested it in ourselves. Nobody bought a car or anything so fancy clothes. We put it in and to new equipment, and that was very helpful.
And this was, Doug, this was before you changed the name to Creedence Clearwater Revival, right? This was
Right.
Was it the Blue Velvets? Was that
Yeah, we were the Blue Velvets to start with as an instrumental trio. Drums, guitar, and piano. Stu played piano, but it was an instrumental. And so Tom would come in every once in a while when he was around, and we were playing. He'd come in and sing a couple songs, and everybody really, were enthused by that. And so John started doing more, working on his vocal until it got to the point where it was pretty good. And Tom said, "You take over vocals unselfishly."
Yeah.
And you have a better rock and roll voice for what we're doing than I do, and just things like that. Until finally we had Susie Q, and that was a rockabilly song. I never liked it. It was one of John's favorites. I never liked it, and didn't really get it. And so we were playing in the clubs, 6 nights a week, 5 sets a night. That's where that's how you used to get your chops together. Now you use a computer, but that's another story.
But that makes sense, Doug. I was just going to say that you guys, I mean, right out of the gate in terms of the Beatles were the same way. Before they started recording music, they were playing, in at the Cavern Club or in Germany, like you say, 5 sets a night, 6 nights a week, and that makes the band so tight that when it comes time to start recording that music, they're a well-oiled machine like you guys. And I mean, to me, it's you guys sounded right out of the gate like a super tight band, like a bunch of guys that have been playing together a long time.
That's because we're a bunch of guys that have been playing for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I wanted to change the beat on Susie Q because it just the rockabilly thing just didn't get it for me. So I came up with a quarter note with my right hand,
Yeah.
And then I played the in between notes on my kick. So in fact, the way that record starts with the drums fading in,
Right.
and then at the end of the song, the drums fade out. So it gives you a real good opportunity to hear exactly what I'm playing uh, before the rest of the guys come in, and it really allows me to us to make that song a 10-minute song. And economics in a bar are it's very simple. You get a band, you get play danceable music, and the audience sweats, and then of course, when that happens, they buy beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
Yeah.
that's one-on-one there. The economics of the bar scene. It is a business. So
Yeah. Well, that song is it doesn't get any swampier or greasier than that song, you know.
and what also happened by doing it, by playing, changing that groove to a quarter note groove, it left space that was not there if you played it, eighth notes,
Yeah.
and it made a huge difference with the guitars. It really gave them air, and so it worked. And something that you tap your foot to, and then also it worked to take the instruments that are playing the song, really stand out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All that space. That's the key right there. That beat that you created, it created all this space to allow those other instruments and to just allow you to make those beats count. You know, that get get
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
so great. Yeah, it's so great. I mean,
Instead of
yeah,
yeah, it's syncopation, really a mild syncopation.
yeah,
And the quarter notes just you. I love it.
yeah. There's a somebody watching named Danny Lorett who said, "Who in this group, meaning all the people watching, didn't play Proud Mary?" And I don't know. I mean, anybody of a certain age, myself included, in my first band, 1974, Proud Mary absolutely was like one of the first songs we learned. You know, it's just a staple.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I call a wedding and bar mitzvah song.
yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, and the singer in my band, Neil Porter, uh,
Oh,
had a comment. He's watching and he said, "Hi, Doug and John. You guys were definitely our heroes as kids and still are." Yeah, yeah. I told you we play. My band plays 3 of your songs, and I'd like to play 23 of them. But they're a blast to play. They are. They're just a enjoy playing them so much. Lots of folks. Oh, I just want to read a comment from Dave Patrick, who's an old friend of mine. Um, he's saying, Doug was the American Ringo for me. Taught me to play a solid pocket with a great feel. I made a lot of pocket change in my youth playing Doug's licks in CCR songs. What a cool guy.
oh, that's great.
Maybe we better give Dave your Venmo account so he can send you some of that pocket change.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I love the pocket.
yeah, we all borrowed from you. But I wanted so moving ahead a little bit. So Creedence band becomes Creedence around 1967 or so. Is that when you changed the name?
Yeah,
68.
but it was in December, so it might as well have been 68.
68. Okay. And at that point, talking about your drums, you hadn't got the Camcos yet.
No,
What were you playing in the very beginning of just out of
well,
curiosity?
I, Ludwig,
Ludwig. Okay.
good old
Yeah.
Ludwig kit, and then I had a Snarlin kit, and then I had that real old kit. That was before the other drums I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And but Camco just had their 50th anniversary,
Right.
and I was one of the first guys to get them. And that was Kenny Williams from Drumland, which became Drum World. Hey, there's some. I just came into view here.
That's a classic photo, man. That's just,
My striped shirt on.
yeah. The biceps. Look at those. Come on. Yeah.
Oh, man.
That was, yeah, that kit. And that was a 22-inch, looks like a 22-inch bass drum, 13 and a 16.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes.
exactly what it was.
Yep. And it's a Ludwig snare I could see in the Albert Hall concert.
That
Or
one, yeah, and
Levine?
I'd love to find another one of those. That's a 15-inch by 7.5 snare, and it's wooden.
Yeah.
It's I forget the wood type, but
Probably, I'm guessing maple, but it could be birch. There's
more than
probably
likely.
some, yeah.
But the first two albums, I used the Chrome 5.5 by 14 Ludwig steel.
Yeah, superphonic, probably.
And then I put the big one in that we just mentioned for Green River, our third album, which was our first #1 album. And that's when I started using the 18-inch hi-hats.
Okay, so that I was going to ask you that. So that the bigger hi-hats weren't right from the beginning. That came, well, that was, let's talk about that. That was that when you started playing Paiste in '69?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I I'm laughing because if you saw the video. When I saw it, I said to myself, God damn it, I'm really pounding the shit out of those things, and he had me on stage right next to him, because when he was not on the microphone, he didn't go out and the edge of the stage and dance and bop around, because he couldn't do it, and he was too very shy in that sense.
Yeah.
So he comes over and turns his back on the audience and plays to me. You probably noticed that but that's how we had done it when we were 13 and just getting started. We'd always done it. So people will say, why did he do that? I said, I don't know.
That's what you did. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the only acoustic instrument on stage, and I've got 800 watts of lead guitar, 800 watts of bass, and I'm in it. I mean, I'm below the level. Their head level is clear of the amp. Mine was right in the middle of it because I'm sitting down.
Right. And it looked like no stage monitors, Doug, that I could see. No stage monitors.
We had side fills.
And probably
later on.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no. Later on, we went to floor monitors, 15 inch or 8, I forget what's the standard. I guess 15-inch. I can't think of the brand name, but
Maybe Altic Lansing or something, or one of the
Lansing, yeah,
yeah.
Altics, yeah, one on either side. And you want to go. I said, I want to be able to keep up with you guys. I have my own monitors. I could only feel my way through.
Could you?
It was pretty loud.
Yeah, so you really couldn't hear yourself. The monitors probably only did so much, I'm guessing, with all the all the wattage those guys were playing through.
Well,
Probably
I could hear, but it was, I had to really work to get it uh, where it's I can comfortably hear and play my parts. I used to break cymbals all the time.
I want to talk to you about that. Yeah, yeah.
I've got another thing. I stopped and thought about it, all the things I did to keep my drum set on the stage, or parts of it. Uh, I used to break the foot pedal right in the middle of where it said Camco.
The footboard. Yeah, yeah.
I broke those, and I broke cymbals. And I also put cymbals in the front row of the stage. And back then, the Fillmore, they didn't have chairs. You walked around and danced and did whatever you did. And so people would come up to the stage and put their chin down on, the stage was up about 3-4 feet. And I'd make one of these monumental cymbal crashes, and I'd see it start to go. Well, what am I going to do? And there's
Oh my God! Yeah.
All these people have their arms and hands there and their heads. I told them when they first come in, that's not a good place to be.
Yeah.
There's live ammo coming out of that thing.
Yeah.
So
stand at your own risk.
Yeah. So I came up with the idea of getting steel rims that weighed about 20 pounds, 25 pounds each. And I put it over the cymbal stand and bring it down to where it tripods out. And I had little cut marks where I would stick this weight, and that would lock that cymbal. So no more cymbals into the audience. But what it did do is instead of having all that power hit the cymbal, it couldn't move now, so it was steady, and so that meant that it's going to break when you hit it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It has nowhere to go. Yeah.
This is fly up the stage. I don't know which one I like better, but it was certainly interesting.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I kept the cymbals on the stage, but I could break 3-4 cymbals a night, and then this is it's a Camco. This is where I would break it. So my uncle had a machine shop, and it's a casting. Casting is weaker than solid metal, whether it be steel, aluminum, whatever. And it just happened to be aluminum. So I took the pedal apart, took it to my uncle's shop, drew it out, and marked all the spots where the screws went. And I never broke another one. It was made out of solid. In fact, the musical instrument museum in Scottsdale, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
Had my Camco set in there, and I have the pedal that I used on that kit because I did that, and then of course the 18-inch cymbals, hi-hat cymbals. Equipment wasn't as bulky as it is now. So when I put the cymbals together to start my experiment, the spring wasn't strong enough to move the cymbal.
The top hat. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get that and control that. That's one of the things I would control by opening it up, and I had certain distances that would create a certain sound, and as long as I can see the light, you can really hear them in there. You can hear it. And have you ever seen the rain? And that was just, it gave me like another instrument, and it was very effective. But my job wasn't over, so I went to the hardware store and found a spring that would had enough tension to pull the cymbals up, but it was too big to get into the area that it needed to. That was easy. You just get a big pair of wire cutters or something like that, and snapped it right off, slid it right back in there, put it all together, and voila!
Wow, that's impressive, because
I still use them.
I know. And I was just going to say, for you to do that back in 1969, like, hi-hat stands were always, for me, if I broke a hi-hat stand, that was a not an easy thing to fix. I could fix anything that broke on a pedal, but when you have all those springs and all that stuff inside internally, so hats off to you that you could get in there and replace the spring and get it to work that way.
Well, the thing that was really cool about it, and I had done some experimenting with it, is that it's a much more melodic cymbal. The bigger it is, the more tone you have, and then I became a thing where my left foot didn't play fours a lot, because I was opening and closing and doing things that very subtle. I mean, if you didn't know anything about drums, you would know something was going on, but and it affects, as I said, with Suzy Q, it helps the other instruments do what what they're supposed to do, and that's another thing I tell young drummers. Is you're not Buddy Rich and you're not Gene Krupa, so put that away.
Yeah,
you're a support instrument. You're the guy that's supporting the house. You're the foundation. So keep it within that arena, and don't get in the way. Everything every note you play has to have value, and you get maximum value when it's the right beat or part, break, whatever, for a piece of music that works, and that's kind of my approach to it. And the problem is, you get a young kid and he's got a drum set, he wants to be Gene Krupa, or I see it all the time. I was able to, because I was learning how to play, but to focus on what the groove is, and not just tempo, but a feel, and you add value to a note. And if you put a break in, that break has to have more value than the note before it. Otherwise, you're playing tiddlywinks, and the same thing coming back. Al Jackson Jr., who was my idol, and a good friend, asked me what my goals were. I says, I want to be a metronome. He says, why do you want to be a metronome? I says, well, John wants me to be a metronome. And he says, well, a metronome's a machine, and you're a human being, and it's okay to move things, but you have to do it within the confines of the beat and the value of the beat. So he holds up a finger, and can you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holds up a finger. He says, going from a verse into a chorus. The chorus is the money part of the song, and that's what all the rest of the song is about. Setting up that section of music. That's the one that everybody knows when they sing a song. They always sing the chorus because that's that's the money part.
That's the
Uh,
hook. Yeah.
and he said, so you get a little excited, and you're going along like this. Well, now you're going into the chorus, so you're right in here now, right in here. You're not here because if you're here, you're rushing,
Yeah.
and you're not
Yeah.
here because if you are, you're dragging. But then you come back to the verse to kind of settle it down. Then you come back, and you might even bring it back a tone. It's not even not an audible thing where it's
I totally know what you're saying, and you do that so well. And I think, have you ever seen The Rain? Another, again, I keep coming back to that song, but I feel like, to me, that's a great example of exactly what you're saying, Doug, where you give it a little lift during the chorus. It just it chugs along. Not it doesn't rush. I mean, it never rushes. It just has a little bit more of a kick, and then when you come back to that dun 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 dun, dun, and then it's like you're a little almost behind the beat.
yeah.
Yeah, it's ah masterful. It really is. I love it. Love it.
And that was the greatest uh, single thing. That he wasn't a teacher. He was a friend, and one of the best drummers ever to walk the planet.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that Booker T and the MGs were the house band for Stax Records. So if you said, "Oh, I love Otis Redding's band," well, that's Booker T and the MGs.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it really is. So yeah, that was the most helpful thing, and it took pressure off of me because I thought I was, if leave me alone and let me play. Uh,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
but some people have to uh, have to have it their way, whether it makes sense or not, just because they're holding the reins and don't want to give up that power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just basically. Uh, who will stop the rain? I put in all those parts
Yeah.
and kick all those drum parts out, and there's a lot of them, but they have value because they lift sections of the song that are written to be lifted.
Yes, exactly.
That wasn't in there, and when I did it, John said, "Don't play that," and I said, "Well, I think it's better than what we have or what's being played or not being played." And so I would take stuff home from my little Sony recording machine, put it on my 4-track machine, and that gave me tracks to put things in and see if they're going to improve or hurt a song that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And I did most of that stuff at home after the work because I was by myself. I only had myself to deal with. I didn't have anybody saying no at my house. Well, never mind.
No, but that's great that you were able to come to the session the next day more prepared, because you would have rather than trying to do it in the studio and the time that it takes, and even
Yeah,
the pressure of that, you could come in having worked a lot of this stuff out. That's great information to know, that because that was a question I was going to ask you, is how much of this stuff did you guys kind of do right in the studio, and how much did you do ahead of time, so you could just go in and record more kind of economically.
Well, everybody, all the guitar players played exactly what they were told to play.
Yeah.
And Stu had came up with some bass things. And when Tom's playing rhythm guitar, and great rhythm guitar too. He's when he left, it left a pretty big hole. But I would who will stop the rain? John said, "Don't play that." And so finally, it was recording time, session time, and I played it the way I had worked it out, and nothing was said. Not that works, but what was said said in silence. I played it that way, and that's what's on the record now.
Yeah, yeah. And the little triplet thing during the rest is the bell of the hi-hat, right? It's the top hi-hat. Ding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it was, it sounds like a big cymbal, and of course the hi-hat's a big cymbal. I always thought it was your crash, I thought it was ding, but mystery solved, the hi-hat.
Yeah, mystery solved.
A couple of quick questions. So just back to Albert Hall for 1 second. It looked to me like the only mics on the drums were a mic in front of the bass drum. You had a closed front head, no hole, felt strip across it, right? Across the front head. No muffling inside the drum. Other than that, no pillows or anything.
No pillows, but there might have been a little rag in there. Trying to think.
But pretty open sounding, and
Oh,
one
yeah.
And one overhead mic, Doug. Just one mic overhead for
just one, and it was working overtime. I'll tell you that.
Man, what a sound! What a I mean, and all kudos to Albert Hall, which is I've been there a few times, and it's a beautiful sounding hall, of course. Legendary, acoustically beautiful sounding room. So you had all that working for you, but just it just blows my mind to see that. And I'll just add to this what we've talked about, and it's the four of you guys on stage playing the songs. They sound just like the record, and that's all a tribute to you guys going in and not getting too crazy with tons of overdubs and things in the records. And I was going to ask you, were most of the records made with just vocal overdubs and you guys playing kind of live, the four of you guys playing your instruments together at the same time live?
Yeah, pretty much. Every once in a while, there would be like a keyboard thing.
Right.
It's used in Grapevine, for example.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Rain? There's a Hammond. You can hear it in there.
A little right hand stuff, kind of back in the mix, little parts. So those types of things would definitely be there.
Watching too. So Doug, I have a couple more quick questions I want to ask you, and then I want to ask you some questions from the audience. In fact, I'm going to ask you this question from my friend Dan Peterson. What CCR song are you most proud of in regards to your contribution? If there's one.
But Born in the Bayou is my favorite Creedence song.
Okay.
And there's another example of a quarter note beat.
Yes.
And but instead of playing like this repeating of something I've already done with the quarter note beat with Susie Q, I play the accents instead of just the in between notes. Doom, 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 doom. So that's just a badass tune.
Badass tune.
And,
badass. Yeah.
I love that one. But also heard it through the grapevine. we stepped out and did a long jam. And it was a rehearsed jam, but when we got in the studio, things got going, and I know I went off and kind of worked around what John was doing on his guitar, and he picked it up, and we did some real not played before parts.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really cool.
I'd say to me, that's, and maybe there are others, but in my mind, that song is maybe where you maybe stretch the most, where you really hear you during that jam, where you really, I know, like where you're playing the hi-hat and you're almost like doubling the hi-hat and the snare at the same time, like I can't explain it, but I know the part you're talking about. Yeah, and you're going for a lot of shit during that instrumental. Yeah, and you don't hear you do that a lot. And
Well, we don't do it.
Yeah.
And it was, but it was just spontaneous. It got going, and there were some parts there that when they got played, I've either followed or led based on what was happening with the lead guitar.
yeah, yeah. So that was a case where while you guys were recording that song, John was playing that lead part live in the studio.
Yeah.
That wasn't overdubbed later. That was you guys playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean that's when records were great. That's when bands, and that was what Steve Gadd was talking about when we talked about this. That's what he meant when he said like they're a real band that plays music, and when
Yeah.
coming from that era. And I just want to talk about the studio too for a second. When you recorded, you have such a great organic drum sound. Your cymbals sound beautiful, your drums sound beautiful, and it sounds like it doesn't sound necessarily like the drums were close mic'd, like it's a lot of room sound.
Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of that, and U87s and SM56 mics were, I believe, what we used, and U87s over the top for sure, and
Yeah.
we like doing it live, and John would kind of talk through the lead singing part, just so we knew where we were, and just keep track of that. It's not a bad thing to keep track of when you're recording. But yeah, we not a lot of frills and fancy dancy stuff, just great rock and roll.
And a lot of the songs done in like a couple of takes? Would you move pretty quickly through the tunes? Like you could probably get a good take in 1 or 2, 3
The
takes?
majority of the takes were first takes.
Wow.
The majority, but we rehearsed for a couple of months ahead.
Yeah.
6 weeks ahead. So we knew when we went in, we didn't do like 10 songs and pick or 15 songs and pick the best 10. We went in with an album, note for note.
Yeah. You knew it. Yeah.
That's how we did it. And we couldn't wait to get to the next bunch because we had played this stuff so much. So it was, if we get it done on a first take basis, that means the quicker we get to the next song and get us through this record and on to the next one, whatever it might have been.
Yeah. Yeah. Jumping back a second to you buy your Camco set in 1969 at Drum World in San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you before that you probably were playing like A Zildjians, which is what everybody was playing in those days.
Yeah,
Probably.
I had the Zildjian cymbals. I don't remember, but they're basically the same. you know, a 22-inch ride, medium.
Yep. Yep.
And
That
that's
was,
what with my Paiste stuff to
yeah.
try to you know, match. And but I think the Paistes uh, uh, are are more of a rock and roll sound to me anyway. You know, and Zildjian had been around for so long, and they, you know, they were putting their cymbals to a lot of, well, Gene Krupa, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
all the big bands had Zildjian cymbals, and when it was Drumland came to me and because he knew I was breaking the crap out of these things, they said they would replace them free if I would use them. And I said, well, at
So,
least they sound like, and we'll talk about it. And I really liked the sound. It was very present, and it really worked for me,
yeah. Yeah.
and sort of took care of it.
Did they, so 1969, Creedence was a known band. You guys were just starting to really take off at that point, or really you had taken off at that point. So you could understand why. Did they connect you to Paiste Drum World, or did they
Kenny Williams from Drumland. Uh,
Drumland? Sorry, Drumland. Yeah.
he's the one that turned me on to Camco as well.
Right. Right.
In fact, I think he let me take a kit home or to the factory to test out. And I said, I really like these. These have so much presence, and the hoops are meticulously put together, and it really has life, especially for rock and roll. So that's was in '69 when both of those things happened.
Right. And the right from the beginning, I know this is going back a long time. I've always been curious. The Paistes that were available in those days were, this is before the 2002s and a lot of the stuff they have now, pretty much just the 602s, I think, and maybe Giant Beat. But were those cymbals like at Albert Hall, for example, were those the Formula 602s, the 18-inch
I mean,
crash?
it's 602s, yeah.
Yeah. And the 20-inch ride and the 18-inch, the hi-hats were two crash cymbals put together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the medium hi-hat was the batter side, the top one, and then the bottom cymbal was, for lack of a better word, the thick,
The heavier. Yeah.
and it needed to be strong enough to, you know, to take this constant. The cymbals aren't usually put to that task, so it worked out great. I'm still using it.
Yeah, man, what a sound. And that 18-inch crash that's on your left,
Yeah,
that's the crash that's on everything, right? Pretty much. I mean, that's
yeah,
that's the crash.
that's the crash. But well, it isn't, because I use the ride cymbal a lot.
Right.
You'll notice, especially in Bayou,
Yes.
used it a lot, and then I use the bell on it a lot, and it's a 22. It's a 22-inch ride.
Oh, it's a 22. Okay, I wasn't sure. I made a note after watching I watched told you yesterday, I watched the documentary again. And at the Albert Hall show, and this is how you play it during Bayou, you can see you're doing these like quarter note you alternate between the ride and the crash, and you're crashing. And it's and it's like this whirling motion, you know what I mean? You get into this groove of it's like a circular thing that's
Oh
just,
yeah,
yeah, it creates this like whirlpool kind of thing going. It's beautiful. So that's a 22, and it must be probably not that heavy if you can crash it the way you're crashing it.
yeah. It was a medium 22,
Yeah.
22 medium ride. And so, you know, it was, I used it a lot, and I'm happy to say now that I have two 18s crashes now, the old steady on the left-hand side, but I've added one to the right-hand side so I can have stereo crashes. How about that?
How about that? Yeah, I know. Wow. And that crash, that 18 that you used back then, that must have been pretty thin, you know, or pretty
Yeah, that
fairly
was
light,
that was the medium.
the medium. Okay. But it really responded. And that's, I'm thinking like heard it through the grapevine and all those, like you know, you crash it a lot during that song.
Yeah, I use the 2 and 4 a lot. In fact, that's
Yeah.
a part that, you know, if you take the song apart and look at the frame, that's the accent you want. You want it on the backbeats. It adds tremendous power, and
Got
you
it.
know, leaves room for the other guys and the odd numbers.
My friend Dan Garza, who's watching, is a Paiste expert. In fact, I think he's in fact I'm sure he's the guy that runs the Paiste Wikipedia page and
Okay.
has all their history, and he's the one when I first spoke with you that said that by his estimation you are their longest endorser, Paiste. And
Yeah.
uh, and he asked me to ask you. He had a whole bunch of questions, but I'm not going to go through all of these. But he asked if you bought some giant beats while you were in England. Um, and I'm guessing you didn't. I'm guessing you just had your stuff with you. And
Yeah, I just
yeah,
had my stuff. As big as that tour was, it was very important. We played other countries too, but our main target was Albert Hall. We wanted to go into the Beatles' house and challenge them,
yeah,
basically. Uh, we
man,
love the Beatles. Don't get me wrong. I'm an athlete now, so I'm very competitive, and there we were in their house looking out, you know. So
yeah, yeah.
here we go, boys. We're coming to get you.
What a show! What an amazing show. Yeah, you know, I just had some other notes here that I'll just kind of go through. And I so appreciate you taking the time to do this today, Doug. I'll thank you again. But
Oh,
uh,
no problem.
there's for anybody who hasn't seen the documentary. I mean, as soon as you're done watching this, if you don't have Netflix, subscribe to it because you just to watch this concert. It's unbelievable. And I made a note yesterday. Tombstone Shadow. Um, man,
Love that song.
that song, yeah, you know, and I love it too, but it's one of those songs that when I saw you play it live, it made me appreciate it even more. You know what I mean? It's like hearing it is one thing and it's a great song, and then playing those eighth notes in the hi-hat, and they were so steady and so strong. And I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that real kind of you know, consistent beat that you have, the way that you can drive the band that way. And that song to me is a great example where you're just chugging along playing those eighth notes, man. It's like ridiculous.
Well, that's you know, it's not a hit single. You know, but what it is it's a pure blues song, and it really fits in nice with a set like we played in Albert Hall, and I've always liked it because I like R&B, you know, so it's a fun thing for me to play.
I'll bet. Yeah. You play a great shuffle, and you play a great train beat. I mean, looking out my back door, the brushwork and I mean, I would consider that a train beat, right? I mean, that's a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's killer. It's just and is that something that I mean, is that something that you as a young drummer you played a lot of that stuff? And because that's not an easy thing to play. That's not I can't my band plays that. I can't play that the way you play it. I mean, not that that's any surprise, but it's so effortless the way you play it. It's so clean and smooth.
Well, we would do gigs for like uh, groups and organizations and so forth. And back in the day, brushes were a pretty prominent thing, and on record as well. So that's where I learned had my introduction to brushes. Just really watch. It's so much so different than what you would play with a stick in that situation, and so it required a little extra practice on my behalf. But yeah, that's it's kind of a country two-step thing.
Yeah.
And looking out my back door, one of my favorites.
That's a beautiful piece of music. Yeah, it really is. It's, I meant to mention at the beginning, just for what it's worth, I started playing drums in 1972, 50 years ago. And one of the records I listened to when I started was Cosmo's Factory, the album that my sister had. She's a few years older than me. And I remember seeing the album cover. You're on the cover riding a 10-speed bike. And I think that's the first time I'd ever become aware of Camco drums was because they're in the shot, I believe. Like it's the studio. And that was one of those records that, I played nonstop, and along with Beatles and Stones. And so, man, what a legacy. Well, Doug, maybe you can talk a little bit about, as we kind of wrap things up, about what you've done, since you haven't stopped. I mean, you kept playing and working in 80s and 90s and recent years, and some of the different projects you've done.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Well, I won't ask you to name every single thing, but I know that, for example, you've got, like we talked about.
Doug Somm.
Yeah.
Wacky Doug.
Groover's Paradise.
Yeah, that's a really fun record. Doug Somm is probably the most talented guy I've worked with in my career, but he's also the wackiest guy in my career. And but everybody that sees Doug and his enormous talent, they really dote over him, and he loses sight of what's supposed to be going on, and basically work. And so Jerry Wexler told Mo Austin that Doug Somm was uncontrollable in the studio. And Stu and I had a production company at that time, and we recorded Groover's Paradise, and there was a B-side, so we did it in a weekend. But I had to keep a hold of Doug's pot bag. He's the biggest pothead. And don't bring the girl to the studio, and give me the pot. Oh, come on, Cosmo, give me that pot.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But, I said, look, your name's on this record, your name's on this, and we have a chance to do good work, and my name's on it,
Right.
So don't lose sight of what we're doing here. And I said, just give me 4 solid hours and I'll give you your pot bag back. and so he respected that. And I did 3 albums with him, 2 of which I produced. And Groover's Paradise is one of them. That's just it shows you the side, the genres that he's capable of doing. When he does the country stuff, it's George Jones, and you do the blues stuff, and it's so many different blues artists, and you would say that's definitely a black man singing the blues. No, that's Doug Somm at his best. So yeah. I wanted to show the the variety of things that he was capable of doing, and that was kind of the purpose of that project. And I still listen to that record and practice with it. It's fun, and I can keep up with the drummer because it's me.
Because it's you. Yeah. I was going to say, when you hit me to that, I downloaded it that day we spoke on the phone, and I listened to it the next morning on a run. And it was, it was unmistakably you, in a different situation, but it was, you have a sound, you have a feel, you have a voice, and it's you. It's cool to hear you outside of what we're all used to hearing you do,
Yeah. I have another solo album, Magic Window, and that's my second solo album. But at least on that one, I practiced my vocals to where I actually liked them. Put a lot of time in on those vocals because I didn't do it on the first one that I put out. So yeah, Don Harrison. We did 2 albums with Don Harrison. Let's see.
Well, I encourage everybody to check these out for sure. And I have one more question to ask you from Joe Goldberger, who is a really good question. Any drummers or artists that you listen to right now that knock you out, or that you like to listen to, whether it's drummers or bands or? That's a tough one. If you asked me that question, I wouldn't know that I could answer that right now.
Yeah, I don't. Most of my listening is with CDs, and that's for practice. Practicing drums without any other instruments is pretty boring. And it's not something that I use. Every once in a while, certain songs I'll play something kind of fancy, but it has beat, it has groove to it. It's not, it's not like a solo thing. I quit doing that some time ago. It's just, it's just not something that I spend time doing. And if I'm not going to put time in it, I'm not going to do it out in public. So.
Yeah. I get it. I understand. I sometimes I'll practice and I'll start soloing and I bore myself. I get bored. I just, it's when I was younger I could do that stuff all day and but it's different now for me anyway. I prefer just playing to some music and good melody, good groove, good songs.
Yeah, my little grandsons just got a drum machine, like with the pads and all of that. And
Yeah.
I said, when you play, put a record on that you like and play along with that. Because you're not going to be doing drum solos and be making any Campbell soup cans. I'll tell you that.
Oh man. Well, Doug, I thank you so much for doing this today. We've gone a long time, and I appreciate it. Man, what an honor to have you on today, and I so appreciate everything you've done for me and for all of us drummers.
Well, when I met Al Jackson for the first time, it was we were on the road, and and we went by Stax Records and met everybody but Al. The MGs were all there, but Al was not, and it was raining, and I was hoping that, you know, while we were there, he'd come in, but he didn't. And so we were leaving. We're out getting in the car, and this Cadillac comes flying in the parking lot and stops. And he hurriedly opens the door and pops out. It's Al Jackson. I went, holy shit.
Wow.
And I had, you know, long hair. Well, like in the rural Albert Hall thing, you know,
Yeah.
long hippie. And I hopped out of the car and I ran him. I says, "You're Al Jackson. You're my idol. I didn't think I'd get to see you." He's looking at me. What the hell is this? You know, so,
Had he heard of the band? Did he know who the band was? He must have.
oh yeah,
right?
he knew who we
Yeah.
were. You know, we weren't recognizable.
Yeah.
You know, everybody knew the Beatles' names and all of that. Nobody knew our names.
But they knew who the band was. They knew who CCR was, man. That, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, it was pretty funny, and I was like a kid, you know, and I was so happy that I got a chance to meet the man, you know, the man for me. And he's a cool guy as well. Was.
I heard that about him. Yeah, that he was, and you know, you would think so, just in the and all the music that he made. Yeah. Well, you're a cool guy too. So.
It's cold. There's snow outside, so I'm definitely a cool guy.
Well, keep warm. Thank you so much for being here today. Everybody, thanks for watching, and a big hand for Doug, Cosmo, Clifford. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Doug, if you would hang with me for 1 second, I'm going to end the live stream and we'll say goodbye. But
Okay.
thanks for watching, everybody. And again, big hand for Doug Clifford. Yeah. All right.